Greetings and welcome to another Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team video. Today I'm going to go over the Q1 2022 tier list for Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team. So before we get into things, please remember to like and subscribe as comment. What do you think of the tier list, and do you agree with it, disagree? How do you think the meta is evolving overall? Because I'd be really interested to hear what people think. So without further ado, let's get on with the video. So yeah, as part of the stat show that I posted, I plan to now do a tier list every quarter. So effectively after every balanced data slate, because I can go off of the stats first that I can record between that time frame, and then after we've reviewed everything, then I can do a new tier list reflecting over the past 3 months. So it's easier to do than like sporadic tier lists or once every year or so. It's just a better way to get something more reliable that is a reflection of my opinions, experience, along with the stats and a little bit of what other people think as well. But that's pretty much it. I'm going to try and keep this short-ish. Don't want it to be too long, but I'll be going through all the factions and rating them individually. But after that, I'll once again explain the tiers. So an S tier kill team is basically the best or one of the best kill teams in the game. They are likely to win a tournament or be in the final. Like, they'll definitely be in the top cart. You're really likely to see them at tournaments, and they're likely to win. So if you ever needed to prepare for a matchup, you always have to know everything about an S tier kill team. Then we've got A tier kill teams who are strong, but not as strong as S tier kill teams. They're definitely likely to be in a top cut of a tournament, so they're likely to get top 3, top 8 finishes, and they have a good chance of winning, but not as good as an S tier kill team. So it's something you need to prepare for as well, because they may not win, but you're still really likely to see them. Then you have the B tier kill teams. Those are more your standard average level pals of kill teams. They're still quite common. They may not win an event, but you're likely to encounter them at a tournament, and they may make a top cut, so like a top 8 finish. So once again, these are kill teams you have to keep in mind. You may not have to remember them because you may not encounter them, but they're still something to keep in mind about. Then you've got your C tier kill teams, which are just middle of the road, pure average. You know, they're a bit popular. You might see them. They will very rarely make a top cut, but they're something you can learn about, but it's just to be aware of. Then you've got your D tier kill teams. These are just bad kill teams. You may see them at events, but it's going to be really hard to win with them, let alone like C tiers could go 2 wins, 2 losses. D tiers are likely to go 1 win, 3 losses, or no wins, 4 losses, something like that. And then you've got the E tier, which was originally the Eldar tier, and it's just for bad kill teams, just plain bad. That's pretty much it. And yeah, those are all the tiers. That's everything you need to know. Once again, I'll put the tier list at the front, so you can, like, if you just want to see the tier list, it will just be there. And then the rest of the video will be me talking through them if you want to hear my explanations. And for the S tier kill teams, I will be offering suggestions on how I would tone them down and make them more like A tier kill teams, because you're naturally going to have S tier kill teams, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, S tier is broken. It's like, can be. S tier is just the best. Even if in a perfectly balanced meta, you may end up having just one S tier because it's the best against all the meta. So it's variations like that. But let's get into it. And another thing to add, in the tier list, I won't be including kill teams that have been replaced in the balanced data slate. So if it says this bespoke kill team has replaced this compendium kill team, I won't include it in the tier list because, well, you know, this is based off of tournaments, and you shouldn't really be using the older kill teams in tournaments. It may upset people, but this is how I view them out, and I'm going off what Games Workshop say. So if you're missing the compendium teams, I'm afraid just going off the balanced data slate, but let's get into it. So yeah, I'll briefly go over everything. As you can see, we've got more S tier kill teams this time. There's been a bit of a change. Before the S tier kill teams were just Pathfinders and Commandos, but a quick rundown is S tier is Void Dancer Troop, Novitiates, Pathfinders and Veteran Guardsmen. A tier is Commandos, Warp Coven, Corsair Void Scarred and Wormblade. B tier are the Hunter Clades, Drukhari, Then the Chaos Space Marine from the Compendiums, High Fleets, and then C tier are Legionary, Grey Knights, Custodes, well, Talons of the Emperor, then Sisters of Battle, Scouts, Guardsmen, General Genestealer Cults, Eldar, but I'll get to that as well. Then D tier are Death Guard, Chaos Demons, all kinds of Space Marines, Necrons, Tau, and then E tier are the Kroot. So that's the whole tier list, but now I'll go through it individually. So starting off with the S tier, yes, we have the Void Dancer Troop. In my opinion, they are the easiest S tier kill team to play. They're an effective straight buff from the Compendium version. Even though tournament results are early, they're only 2 weeks old, you know, containing all current Void Dancer Troop usage, they are now, I think they have the highest win rate on like 76% with the second highest usage, just behind Veteran Guardsmen. Balance away, like, you know, they get, they're not autopilots, but if you're an experienced player, you're going to be very hard to beat with these because you have the best tac op in the faction tac op in the game. You should always be maxing your tac ops. Say-def points are really easy to max out. And remember, once you get 4, you're getting an extra command point and then an extra command point every turn. So then, you know, they don't have any weaknesses pretty much. You've got 4 up Invrons, 3 APL, and you can fly. They have a lot of tricks. They negate combat, shooting, being shot at. They do everything. They are very good. They have only a few bad matchups, which are namely just Pathfinders and Veteran Guardsmen. Other than that, with Segaratch's Jest, they completely shut down melee teams like before. Warp Coven were a good counter to them with Zangors, but because of Segaratch's Jest, your Zangors are now useless to them because you've only got 4 attacks, hitting on 4s. Segaratch's Jest mean they're probably going to out-parry you when you're first strike, so they can double hit you for free and kill you. So it's just rough if you're playing into them. Balance-wise, obviously we still need to wait for more results, but if they continue to dominate the meta as they are, personally, there's 2 ways going about it. You have the easy way, if Games Workshop don't want to change too much, and the extensive way. Easy way, you make the Death Jester and the Shadow Seer two roster slots, and you remove all command points from, the Say-Defs. That's the simplest fix. If they want to do something more in depth, you make them 2 APL, you give them the free dash, as per the Corsair Void Guard. You remove their flying, give them, climbing ropes, so they still have that way to negate terrain. And yeah, you either massively increase how much it is to max out Say-Def points or remove the command points. So I know some people have been like tossing around that Say-Def points might be increased to 6. So instead of maxing out, getting the full effects at 4, might get it at 6 and then keep the command points, or they may just remove the command points altogether. The only problem is they've still got like the easiest tac op in the game, like with their faction tac op 1. It's a really complex subject, but we'll have to wait for the meta to evolve and see what Games Workshop does. But I wouldn't be surprised if they get hit in the next balanced data slate. Then we have the Novitiates. The reason they're here, I always thought they were strong, but as per their stats, they have a 63% win rate, which is the highest win rate in the game before the Void Dancer Troop. And yeah, the main problem with them is their Acts of Faith. They effectively gain so much Acts of Faith that they don't need to roll dice, because remember, you can always use unlimited rerolls. Like, you can reroll all your dice for 1 Act of Faith each time, and then you can pay 2 or 3 to change a dice roll if you're attacking. So for example, if you needed to change a failure to success, that's 2 Acts of Faith, or you wanted to change a success into a crit, that's 3. When attacking, when defending, they're both 2, so it's easier to defend. So the problem you have is when you're shooting at them and you don't have AP, if you roll 3 hits on average with 4 dice, and then they roll 2 saves, which is about average with 3 defense dice on a 4-up save, they can spend 2 faith points to make that failure a success, so they have 3 successes, or they can spend 1 act of faith to reroll and then 2 acts of faith to make that one of them a crit, so they can, like, you know, negate more stuff. So what you find is they're really hard to kill at shooting unless you have lots of AP, and you generally have to be rolling more dice than they can. They're very tough to deal with, and they generate so much acts of faith. Like, if they can get their Chalice Lady behind an objective where there's no line of sight onto them, they're flat getting 6 acts of faith per turn, on top of giving their Condemner, the one with the silent gun, a 3 acts of faith once per game. They will get even more buffed if the devs give them their specialisms to generate acts of faith, because then they effectively have unlimited acts of faith. Toning them down is really difficult in my opinion, because the problem is acts of faith trigger after you've rolled dice, so they can roll dice and then modify. I would have preferred it if you could only modify before you roll dice. One interesting thing I've heard people say is you can only use 1 act of faith per turn outside of the rerolls, because currently you can use all acts of faith repeatedly throughout the turn. Just only you can pair the reroll and then another act of faith. Yeah, you can't. But you can do that repeatedly. You just can't go, oh, I'm going to reroll a dice, change a failed into a success, and then change a success into a crit. You can't do that. You can only do a reroll and change a dice. But the thing I've seen is lowering how much dice acts of faith they generate. I think that would be a start. Personally, I would probably reduce them to they get 2 acts of faith, a turning point, and then their chalice gives 1 or 2 depending if they're near an objective. Because I think that's the main problem with the acts of faith. They're too strong. Maybe also removing one of their flamers so they can only have 1 instead of 2, because the thing about their flamers, they're 2/3 damage, and with a stratagem they're 3/4. On 5 dice hitting on 2s, that kills pretty much everything. So they're really good because they just don't need to roll dice. So the problem is, to tone them down, you have to affect their acts of faith. Then we got the Pathfinders. People are saying, they're not that good for S tier. They're at a 57.5% win rate. So remember, the healthy range is 45 to 55. 5% either way is a warning sign. So if it's like 45 to 40, it's kind of like, oh, they need a bit of a tone up. If it's 55 to 60, you go, okay, that's a bit of a danger. We might need to watch out if they get higher. But you have the entire problem of people refusing to use them. They're just really good. Even with the balanced data slate changes, yes, they are worthy causes now. 2 command points. You can only use it with going second, and you can only use it once per game. You can't chain more than 2 operatives. And your Grenadier lost a grenade for some reason. And Markelites don't work on... 5 Markelites don't work if you're behind heavy cover. They're still really good, because I think what people are forgetting, they're 13 operatives, 12 if they take the recon drone. Now you generally don't take the recon drone, so you have 13 bodies. And because you have 13 bodies, with potentially each warrior having a 4/5 gun with 4 dice in on 4s, excluding the Markelite buffs, you just outgun and outshoot and outactivate pretty much everyone outside of basically Vet Guard. I still think they're too good. The way I would tone them down is reducing their roster size from 13 to 11. So if they take the recon drone, they get 11 operatives. Otherwise, they get... they get 10 operatives. Otherwise, they get 11. And I think losing 2 bodies would help, because remember, they get 2 gunners, all of that. But we'll have to wait for the stats for that, because Pathfinder players get very upset, even though when I tell them I've been playing Pathfinders for a long time, like the balanced data slate didn't do anything to me. But we'll have to wait for the stats. In my opinion, they're still an S tier kill team, super strong, really hard to deal with in the hands of a good player, like scary. Then you've got Vet Guard. I personally think they're like A+, yeah? Like they're almost S tier. The only reason I've put them in the S tier is because they have the highest representation with a really high win rate. It's like a 56 or 58% win rate. And the crazy thing is they have the highest usage in the world, and they still have that good a win rate. I think they're almost perfect in terms of balance-wise. They just need a few tweaks, because the great thing is, 14 bodies, they have like 4 special weapons, and they can take 3 crack grenades. They've got a lot of tools and bodies, and I think people are getting better playing the game with them, which is why we're seeing a general rise in their success, because they play the mission better, because they got 14 bodies. Personally, all I would do to tone them down is the spotter doesn't work on if you're behind heavy cover, just to synergize with the Pathfinders. And this is one thing Charles pointed out to me, because we got it wrong, but I think your 4 extra ancillary dudes shouldn't get equipment, because if you can't put grenades on them or any sort of equipment, it means you have to be more careful with what you select in your roster, because Charles thought you couldn't do that, so he was going like, I think I'm going to drop these 2 operatives to just get 2 more GA2 guys so I can put grenades on them and stuff. And I don't think it would be a massive nerf. It would just, because it represents them not being part of your kill team. You've just suddenly called in support, so you can't give them equipment. I think that would be a nice change. And then the other thing is grenades don't benefit from take aim, so they don't get reroll 1s, just to synergize once again with Pathfinders. So, so they don't have any effective rerolls on their grenades, because then it would limit the effectiveness of crack grenades, because they can take 3 cracks. And remember, then they also have a melter gun, a fusion gun, a grenade launcher, and then a sniper rifle. So they have lots of high damage / high AP weaponry on top of 3 crack grenades. So just losing the reroll on the crack grenades makes it a bit fairer for everyone else. And they kind of are the biggest gatekeeper to elite kill teams, because they can take 3 crack grenades and 3 AP guns along with a sniper rifle. So I just think a minor tweak like that would just put them solid A. Like, they're still really good. As I said, they're only in the S tier for me just because they have the highest representation with a super high win rate, which means something's going on there. But I do think it's a bit of a case of you got really good players playing it. But I think with those little tweaks, it'd be just as balanced as Commandos. So going to the A tier, we have the Commandos. They're pretty much fine now. They've got they had the 2nd highest, now they have the 3rd highest usage, and they've got a solid win rate. It's about 50%. They're, with all the balance data slate changes, they've only got one dynamite. They're fine. They're just still really solid, still super strong, especially in the right matchup. And they're just really fun, really cost efficient. You only need 1 box and you're done. Just a super solid kill team that I think is perfect now. Doesn't need any more tweaks. Still got a lot of depth, and it rewards good, experienced play. Now we have the Warp Coven. I think they're A tier. They have enough tricks. They really hate Void Dancer Troop and Pathfinders. But with the changes to Pathfinders and hopefully changes to Void Dancer Troop, they'll be, still solid in A tier. They've got some weaknesses, but remember, it's the 3 sorcerers, usually with a Soul Reaper and then 4 Zangor. That's a solid team. You've got the best board control in the game, I would say, in terms of effects with their anti-dash charge power. They take a lot of practice, and people still need to remember your mutations are fixed on your roster. But other than that, they're just super solid. They just take a lot of practice, and I think that's good in a kill team. They're not easy to use, but in the right hands, they're very strong. Then we have the Corsair Void Guard, the new Corsairs. They're just solid A. They've got a lot of tricks, 9 operatives, 8 wounds for op save. They've got a blaster, a melter pistol, the Neuro Disruptor on the leader. They've just got a lot of tricks. They're really good at scoring their tac ops via their light fingers. They can play the mesh in really well. They just kind of don't like playing into Vet Guard, Pathfinders, and Void Dancer Troop is a weird matchup for them. It's like a 50-50 swing based on if you pop Outcasts. Otherwise, they're just a really solid and well-balanced kill team. I would like it if you could take a gunner and a heavy gunner, because I think the heavy gunner is so bad, there's no downside. You'd probably just swap out the sniper. I think it'd be fine with how punishing to use the heavy gunner is. But other than that, they're just super solid, and they have a really high usage, in terms of people buying and painting them just because they're great miniatures. So solid A for me. Then we have the Wormblades. These guys peaked early, they were everywhere and doing quite well, and they've kind of dropped in success. But I think they're still a really solid kill team. You live on your 2 co-operatives, and then you've got effectively 9 other bodies who are playing the mission. They've got a lot of tricks, but as with the other White Dwarf teams, and Void Dancer Troops, they're really well balanced, and I just like how they work. They're a bit rules heavy, but they really reflect how Genestealer cults operate, and they're a nice addition to the game. Just really fun, and like the Warp Coven, if you put a lot of effort into them, you should be able to do well. They just kind of struggle a bit against the S-tier kill teams because they're more powerful and more flexible, because the main problem with the Wormblade, once your 2 operatives die, if they die early before they've done anything, your kill team kind of falls apart, which is nice. It's kind of thematic, but that's the main weakness of the kill team, and I like that. They kind of play their own game while representing themselves narratively. It's really cool. Now we've got the B tier. So then we got the Hunterclades. Hunterclades, I don't know. They have tricks, but like the key thing they're missing is like grenades and just something else. It's hard to describe. I thought about maybe adding, there's like a tech priest with the fat tech priest with a gun, adding that as a leader would be cool, and maybe elect 2 priests, but I don't think we'd get that. They might just rejig their equipment. They need something. I'm just not sure how you buff them without breaking them. They're very solid, they're very fair. I've seen people do well with them if they've been playing them for like weeks/months, but I think they just lose out to the other bespoke teams just because they were the most balanced, and that's pretty much it. Nothing much more to say. If I was including the AdMech, I'd put them on the same level again. They're basically whatever you like to play, but at the moment, you know, you can only really use Hunter Clades. Then you've got the Comorites, the Drukhari, really solid. They're just like a slightly weaker Corsair Void Guard. They're still crazy with 2 blasters and, you know, their splinter cannon. They can do a lot of tricks, even with witches. Very, very good compendium team that is almost on the same level as bespoke teams. Highly recommend playing. Super fun and a lot of tricks and rules. Then you've got the normal Chaos Space Marines. And you may be asking, why, John? And it's mainly because you can take 3 Chaos Space Marines and like 8 cultists. The cultists add that extra flexibility, more bodies for the mission, and they can forward deploy and stuff. You still have most of the same tricks as the bespoke version, but you have way more bodies and can effectively play the game better, which is why I rate them so highly. They're definitely better than the Legionary in my opinion. Maybe not in the mirror, but overall they're much better at playing the game, which is why I put them at beta. And then finally we have the High Fleets, the Tyranids. They're just your standard gatekeeper team. You've got, you know, the 10 Gene Stealers always on conceal effectively. They're really rough check. So if you can't beat them, you're going to struggle playing against the tiers higher than them because they just have all these tricks. You know, you can do 3 Warriors and 5 Gene Stealers, or 5 Gene Stealers and 8 Tyranid, you know, Swarm, or 3 Warriors and 8 Swarm, or even like 6 Warriors. There's a lot of flexibility, limited a bit by the roster, but it's the same tricks as before, and they're doing quite solidly. So solid B tier for me. For C tier, we have the Legionary kill team, because they are just in a rough spot. They have a severe roster limitation where they cannot mix marks. And I'm fine with not mixing marks on the board, as I said in my review. Mixing it on the roster, really tough. So they need to remove that. And they need a 7th body, because ideally I would prefer them to have extra wounds. But if you increase their wounds, you need to increase it for all Space Marines throughout the game. 7th Warrior, they're fine. At the moment, they struggle to play the mission. They can beat Compendium teams. I don't even think they can beat Hunter Clades. They can't beat the other bespoke teams, in my opinion. Struggle playing the mission unless you're playing in a tournament which only uses like 5 objective missions or like Master the Terminals. Otherwise, they just struggle to compete because they're an elite kill team and they have severe roster limitations. If you can buff those 2, and as I say, you would buff them by like giving them an extra warrior and removing the restriction on the roster, then you would see the rise. I think they would rise in power as well, because then you would take basically a roster that was half Tzeentch and half Nurgle and go in Nurgle against melee guys and Tzeentch against shooting teams. As it stands, they just struggle. They've got a lot of bad things going for them. So hopefully they get buffed in the future. Then we have the Grey Knights. You can now take 6 Grey Knights. They're still the best Marine team. They've all got force weapons or whatever melee weapon you choose. And they all have 6 Stormbolters, you know, like 6 Stormbolters. You're never going to take the Gunner. Really good team. Just great for Marines. Unfortunately, they're what Marines should be. But the problem is that's too good in a way. You know, as I said, they all have force weapons and they all have Stormbolters, which normal Marines can't have. But 6 bodies is nice, makes them better. And there's just solid C tier. Custodies have dropped. They used to be A tier. Now, after seeing how they're doing, full Custodies ain't that strong, and the release of more bespoke teams has just kind of outpaced them because they just play the mission better. So, you know, I think Custodies are fine in C tier. People want to make them 4 APL again, and I'm like, just leave them as they are. I'm sure they'll get a White Dwarf bespoke team that will replace them. But as they are, they're still a really solid gatekeeper team, and I think they beat most Compendium teams. They just kind of have this weird Legionary problem, although I'd say not as extensive. Then you got Compendium Sisters. They're just super solid C tier. Almost B tier, but like they're just super solid. They have their own version of Just a Scratch. They can either be like 10 Sisters, so 8 wounds, with free up saves, or you can mix them in melee. Really flexible. Saw them a lot at the Warhammer World Team Tournament. They're pretty easy to get into and fairly powerful, especially for a compendium team. So solid C. Then you've got scouts. 10 scouts. They're now on their own, but in my opinion, they're really good. You know, you've got 10 effectively Marines who can play the mission better. Really solid, just because there's 10 of them. Limited in what they can do to, like, stats-wise, but they've just got a lot of flexibility and tools and operatives to change around with, because you can take like sniper rifles, bolt guns, heavy bolters, like missile launchers. They're very good. It's weird how the scouts are better than general marines. Then we have the Imperial Guard. Mixed them in with Scions. Scions have like got some tools as well. Once again, I would say the problem is Vet Guard are just better. They're really good, almost B tier as well, but they have a lot of tricks. They're kind of just a bit watered down guardsmen, but if you wanted to play a 10 guardsman kill team, playing pure Scions is probably the way to go. Just a solid kill team overall. Nothing I can really, you know, change about them. It's just maybe we might get a pure Scion team in the future, or something like with Kazakin, because Kazakin are rumored. But other than that, they're just solid C10. Nothing more to add. Then you have the standard Genestealer Colts. A little bit more flexible in a way, because they can take more melee operatives in terms of like the Acolyte hybrids. Otherwise, they're just quite a bit weaker than the Wormblade. As I say, the Wormblade kind of cover the flaws their compendium versions had. So they're still fun to take, but I would generally just say go play with the Wormblade. But outside of that, they're C tier. Then we have the biggest rise coming from E tier for Eldar. We have the Eldar in C tier. Now, the main reason is because of the balanced data slate, because every fire team got an extra body, and it's only because of one build, and that is 12 Storm Guardians with 2 fusion rifles and like, I think it's 5 plasma grenades is the best build for them. And it's actually hilariously quite good. It still loses to a lot of the compendium, the bespoke teams, but 2 fusion guns with 5 plasma grenades is crazy. Like, if you're not prepared, they can kind of just massacre everything, which I don't think was intentional. But as I said, they still lose to bespoke teams. It's just funny when suddenly, like, they get swarmed by Storm Guardians, just going, ah! So they're C tier now. Pretty cool. It's mainly the Guardian, Storm Guardian build, but it's they received the best buff from the data slate. Then we got the D tier. First are the Death Guard. And it's mainly just their movement. They're too slow to compete with the game. Yes, they've got more models now. They can take a extra Plague Marine. They're just too slow. They're too slow to compete. It's really weird, you know? They're super tough to kill, but they don't get to where they need to in time. And I'm not sure how they can fix that in terms of Games Workshop without limiting them to a max of like 6-inch move. Because at the moment you kind of move dash for 7 inches, or you hope you're around the bell. It's really tough because they're super representative of how they operate in the background. They're just too slow to capture objectives. So that's their main weakness. Just they're too slow, which is why I've rated them so low. Now we have Chaos Demons. The problem with Chaos Demons is they've lost all their tricks. Like, bespoke teams eat them apart. Especially now, you can't afford going no shooting. And it's just really tough. You know, they were a super solid kill team, but now they're just missing that je ne sais quoi. I don't know how you would buff them without making dedicated god teams, like a Khorne demon team, Nurgle demon team, that kind of thing, which we may see in the future. But at the moment, they're showing their age quite a bit now. Then we have the Marine teams. They're still D tier. Tactical Marines technically got worse because they didn't gain a body, but everyone else gained a body. So they're okay. They still have the problem of elite kill teams where they just can't compete in the mission, and like they really hate Harlequins. But the way I would probably change them is basically I think all Marines should have +2 wounds, and I think that would be fine. Then they would be kind of better, or you give them all an extra body. One or the other. Probably they're going to get the extra body. They're just kind of more let down about how the game operates. So I would hate to see the game change where there's only like 5 objectives for most missions. It's just unfortunate how they are at the moment. So either Games Workshop need to give them another extra operative, or increase all their wounds by 2. Then we have Necrons. They are better, but once again, you know, they got flayed ones do more damage. Reanimation protocols are now free. They used to be B tier. They've dropped just because they're too slow. They're too slow to complete missions. You will generally kill people who try to get into a shootout with you, but you won't win the game because you've killed them while they've scored their objectives because you're too slow to move up. You're either moving 4 inches and shooting, or running all the way, moving and dashing to get to objectives, or your opponent can do like move onto objective, shoot you, and do all this kind of stuff and just out contest you. So once again, it's really tough. Do you give them more movement and then worry about them being able to dominate the game? Very difficult. Probably going to have to see what happens when they get a bespoke team, because they've been buffed quite a lot already, but their main weakness is their movement, which is why they're in the D tier for me. Then we've got Tau. They were punished for their sins for the original edition of Kill Team, and now Pathfinders are just 100% better. Pathfinders do everything they can do, but better, have better rules, and more bodies. Even stealth suits aren't that good because you have to drop a stealth suit for 2 drones. So yeah, they're just paying for the sins of the past, and just play Pathfinders. And then E tier, we have Kroot. I'm sorry, but Kroot are just so bad now. They were quite good in my opinion before, but the issue is now, as I said, they're stuck on this, oh, we have a great turning point 1 because we can change all our orders at the start of turning point 1. But for turning point 2, they fall apart. They haven't got much of a melee punch outside of the Krootox. Their Kroot Hounds are fast, but they just lack a punch. Like all you're doing is like throwing bowlers at people to reduce them to -1 APL, and your Kroot warriors don't really hit that hard, either does your leader. That's why they're just not that good. Like even against Death Guard and stuff, they won't be able to kill through the Death Guard, who will probably lose on the missions, but still be able to contest stuff. So that's how I would rate them at the moment, and the tier list as a whole. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the tier list. Once again, it's a reflection of my impressions, because, you know, I've been playing a lot of tournaments and privately, as well as my reflection from the stats that we've recorded and from discussing from people as a bit. I think in the terms of the discussion thing, the biggest one was Vet Guard, because I personally still feel Vet Guard are A+, but everyone feels they're S tier because they kind of gatekeep stuff. And then, like, there's other factors, I think, which are a problem, like grenades, but I don't know how you change grenades without ruining them. I've seen people say you can only use 1 grenade per turning point, or maybe, like, I'm thinking maybe make crack grenades, limit to 1 per kill team, something like that. It's very difficult because one of the main weaknesses of Hunterclades is that they don't have grenades. They have grenades in their narrative rules, I think, but not in their competitive rules. And they're suffering because they don't have grenades, which is really weird. But that's pretty much it. I think overall the meta is really healthy. Even the novitiates, because if you look at the previous stats, they were the only one on a 63% win rate. Generally, everyone's between 55 and 45. You have a bit above and below. Hunterclades obviously have the worst bespoke win rate at 35%, but they need help. Still better than Legionary, in my opinion. And yeah, you've got Void Dancers at the top, which I don't think will change unless they get nerfed in the next 3 months, which they likely will be, but we'll have to wait and see. Still quite early. But that's pretty much it. I think what people are going to be surprised at is like Pathfinder's S tier, because I still think they're S tier, where when you chat with other competitive players, they pretty much agree as well because of the 13 operative size. And apparently playtesters were saying Pathfinders were originally going to be hit harder, but they wanted to, apparently the devs want to take a more cautious approach, so I don't know how much true that is. And, you know, we kind of, even though I think they should be lowered to 11 operatives on the roster, we have to wait for the stats, because I could be wrong, and a lot of Pathfinder players get very angry at me when I suggest that. But that's pretty much it. I just want to know what you guys think. So yeah, please remember to like and subscribe, as comment. Let me know what you think of this tier list. What do you like about it? What you dislike, agree, disagree? And how do you think about my new quarterly format? Because it's basically going to go balanced data slate, stats, and then tier lists. So we should get one every 3 months in that succession. So let me know what you think of that, because that's very important to me. And do you like this regularity? Because I want to be able to appeal to both sides and show like the competitiveness of the game, as well as the more casual side when I do like certain battle reports and stuff, and as well as other stuff I'll cover like tips and learning. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I think overall we have a very healthy meta. I'm worried about the Void Dance troops, but we need to wait for more stats. And that's pretty much it. I think I've thanked everyone. Let me thank my patrons. Remember, I've got a Discord, so if you want to check out my Discord, you can find it like under Can You Roll a Crit. I'll put an invite link, which may expire, but if not, just PM me and I'll add you. I'll send you an invite. I also got a Patreon, so check that out. And speaking of patrons, I have a Patreon to shout out because I've just gone live. Let me bring it up. I've got 2 patrons. So for my Adept of the Crits, I want to thank Theodore Kivisto. So thank you so much. And then we've got a veteran of the Crits. So thank you so much to Confucius. Really cool. Wow. Thank you so much. And anyone who always just, supports me in general. But that's pretty much it. I'll be back again soon with more content. I've got a lot of tournaments coming up, and I'm like painting my Void Dancer, I am painting my Void Dancer troop, and also my Corsair Void Guard, and I should have some more battle reports coming up soon. But that's pretty much it. Hopefully this wasn't too long. I need to trim it down. And yeah, I don't think I'll do an article for this because I probably won't have the time, but I'll see. But yeah, it's been a packed week, and I hope you enjoy it. And remember, no matter what the tiers say, you stay away from tier 15. And also, tiers can't stop you from rolling a crit.